Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Samurai Goddess. The goddess next door takes on kung fu killers in this action-packed martial arts Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Samurai Goddess in paperback and e-readers today. As I was watching a video by YouTuber The Fourth Age where he talked about Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, and what made her not be a heroine, I came to an epiphany regarding why it's so hard to sell the whole concept of the hero's journey to black audiences. And after I watched that video, I realized why black audiences struggle to connect with the whole concept of a hero and why they struggle to deal with the whole concept of the hero's journey. Now, to understand why so many black audiences struggle with the whole concept of a hero and the hero's journey, you have to understand two concepts I learned from YouTuber David Carroll. And those two concepts regard black victimology and black pathology. Now, when it comes down to most black people who have grown up in America over the last 50 years, they have learned black victimology and black pathology. And they learned that from the culture they were taught by their mothers, who were indoctrinated by the feminist movement into feminism and the policies of the white liberal welfare state. Now, under the welfare state and feminism, most black mothers and even some black fathers learned the whole concept of victimology and and that created black pathology. Now, this victimology they learned was that nothing was their fault, and because nothing was their fault, they needed to blame someone else. And that someone else they blamed for all of their problems was this construct known as the evil white man. So this white man, who is not a physical person, he is a social construct created by feminists and liberals, is the person responsible for all of black people's problems. Now, this whole frame of thinking runs diametrically opposed to what the concept of a hero is. Because when you look at the concept of a hero is all about taking responsibility for oneself, taking responsibility for one situation, and saying that you are capable of making change by taking responsibility for yourself, taking responsibility for the situation, taking charge of the situation, and then taking constructive action to resolve the situation. That is the way a hero thinks. Now, someone who has a victimized mindset, they are not thinking about taking any sort of charge because in their mind it's somebody else's fault, and so because it's someone else's fault, they need to let someone else take responsibility for protecting them. That's why it's hard to sell the whole concept of the hero's journey to many in the black community, because they have a victimized mindset and they believe that because they are victims, it's somebody else's fault, and because it's somebody else's fault, somebody else needs to take responsibility. Now, this is why it's, again, hard to sell the concept of a hero to black audiences, because their whole frame of thinking, again, comes from victimology. And again, when you look at the whole concept of a hero is about taking responsibility, because that's part of their character transformation arc. Because part of what makes a hero is that they go on this hero's journey, and as they go on this hero's journey, they are working towards making changes on their mission and overcoming obstacles that would ever get in their way. And as a hero, this is what they want to do. They want to be able to say they went on this journey, they learned different things, and they learned different things not only about the situation they have, but they learn things about themselves. And when it comes down to a lot of black people who have the victimology frame of thinking, they don't want to take the time to do that sort of self-reflection or that type of self-examination, because that's also part of the hero's journey, going out and learning about what's wrong with you so that you start making changes internally so that you can make efforts to improve the quality of the life of yourself and the people around you. And this is something that is an intangible that a lot of black people have not learned, because in their mind, again, it's always somebody else's fault. And because it's somebody else's fault, then someone else needs to come in and do for them. And it's not about them going out to do for themselves. And when it comes down to the hero, that's what the journey is all about. Them learning to stop being dependent on others and then learning how to take responsibility for themselves and the people, and protecting the lives of the people in their communities. That's what heroes do. They want to stand up for others and stand up for people in their community. But most black people have been taught that you don't have to stand up for yourself. You stand in the background and you submit to people because, again, from the victim mindset, you learn that you have no power and that the power is what somebody else has over you. Because when it comes down to people with a victimized mindset, they have a codependent way of thinking. And in a codependent way of thinking that most black people have, what happens is they believe that somebody else has more power than they are. And in codependency, the relationship is one person has more power than the other, and the other person feels powerless. So they go in this vicious cycle of victim and abuser, where the abused keeps making accusations saying that the person is doing the wrong, and then the victim makes some conciliatory concessions, and this is how they get their needs met. It's not a healthy way to do things at all. And this is what a lot of black people have learned over the last 50 years, is this codependency. And that, again, is diametrically opposed to what the hero's journey is in comic books, science fiction, fantasy, manga, and anime. Because in those forms of media, again, the hero's journey is all about the individual going on this quest, seeing all these obstacles, making plans to overcome the obstacles, and then if they run into an obstacle that is more challenging, they start taking time to self-reflect, self-examine, and then see what is wrong with them. And this is something that you don't see in many forms of black media. And that's what is the big problem with a lot of black media, is that a lot of the characters, what happens is they become stuck in a state of arrested development because they only reach a certain point of growth and then they stop. And because they stop at the midpoint, these characters never really mature. And an example of that, again, is Terry McMillan's Waiting to Exhale, where we have these 4 women who were out here saying they could not find the good man, but because they could not see the bad things about themselves and reflect on those bad things, they never make any efforts to make changes in their lives that would help them move forward. And then when Terry McMillan wrote the sequel to Waiting to Exhale, Getting the Happy, many people were angry about that book because they did not see any sort of growth or progression of the characters, nor did they see the characters learn from the mistakes of the previous novel. And that was because these characters never really went through a full character transformation arc, because in a full character transformation arc, usually around the second plot point, this is where the character starts to have this revelation about what they are doing wrong in their lives, and they start really making serious efforts to correct it. Now, usually in plot point 1, this is where they have one revelation, but usually it's plot point 2 where they start really taking that internal look, and usually towards the climax and conclusion of the book that we get to the point where they start really making serious changes in their lives to move forward. Because when you have a story of a hero, it's not just supposed to be about him overcoming physical obstacles in defeating the bad guy. It's about them overcoming internal issues that are preventing them from living the life that they want to live and actualizing their potential as a person. Because when we look at something like the original Star Wars trilogy, or we look at some of the stories out there, it's always about the hero coming to that point where they take that look within and say, this is what's holding me back, and I either need to let something go, or I need to make some critical choice that will help me move things forward. And this is the big problem with many as related to black literature and black art, is that when you have people writing this stuff, oftentimes there is no full character transformation arc, because so many people are caught up in black victimology, and that they don't see how black victimology impedes the growth of black people. Because when you have someone who believes in victimology, again, it's never about them taking that personal responsibility. It's never about them taking that time to reflect on self. And it's never about them going out here and understanding that the world that they live in, if you want to make changes in that world, you first have to start by making changes to yourself, because it's your life paradigm that is the thing that is holding you back and is the thing that is preventing you from moving forward. So when I look at a lot of this black literature and the black arts, a lot of people, they wonder why it's so hard for a lot of black people to relate to comic books, science fiction, and fantasy. And again, I look at it now and I understand that it has to do with these mentalities of victimology, and that victimology is what creates that black pathology, which tells you, again, it's never your fault, and because you don't believe it's your fault, you don't believe you have the power to change things, and because you believe it's somebody else's responsibility, you don't take responsibility for your own life, and you don't take charge of your own life. And that's reflected a lot in a lot of the art and the literature, again, where we see these black characters, they never really go through a full character transformation arc. They never reach a point where they go from point A to point B, and they come out of the whole journey a completely changed person. Usually, again, they stop at that midpoint, and that's where everything ends. And that's really, again, sad, because this character never really makes those changes that allow them to grow, and the reader never really gets to experience a full story where they see this character go from a person who was this type of person at the beginning, but then goes on to achieve the success they want in the end. And the reason why they do that, again, is because of that victimized mindset. And that victimized mindset is something black people, they have to work towards breaking, because that victimology and that victim mindset is one of those things that is reflected in our art and reflected in our literature, even far back as Richard Wright back in his books. And it's one of those things that prevents us from growing as a people, because in order for us to grow as a people, we have to see ourselves as heroes, and we have to start going on the hero's journey. And the only way to see the hero's journey as something worthwhile is to really make meaningful choices, make hard sacrifices, because that's what heroes do when they go out here to do what is right and stand up for what is right. They make painful and hard choices, and sadly, when it comes down to a lot of people as it relates to the black experience, they have been cheated out of that, because when it comes down to the whole victimology mindset, it tells them that they can't make those choices, and if they do, that they're going to suffer for them, when in actuality, the pain that a person suffers is very minimal when you compare it to the growth they would have as they go on in their journey. Because when it comes down to that whole codependent relationship, those people who want to keep black people at the bottom of the world, what they want to keep them there for, so that they can use black people as a resource to get their needs met in a covert contract, and they get their needs met at the expense of black people's growth, black people's potential, and these intangibles are sucked away from black people because they want to believe that, again, they don't have the power to take responsibility for their own lives or have the power to move their lives forward. And that's one of the things that victimology does to black people, is it robs black people of the ability to empower themselves by taking power over their own lives. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, The Temptation of John Haynes, and the Spinsterella trilogy, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.